That's right. You're listening to another episode of the Co-Main Event Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. I'm Chad Dundas. That's Ben Folks. We're both longtime MMA journalists, and for nearly the last 14 years, we've been meeting here every week to break down all the action in the wild, weird, and occasionally wonderful world of mixed martial arts. Ben, the UFC went to Seattle and put on a good-ass event last weekend. Every fight on the main card ended in a stoppage, 9 stoppages overall in 13 fights. We had highlight reel violence. We had a potential changing of the guard. We had one high profile retirement and one retirement that was so low profile that you have to feel bad for the guy.
Yeah.
Many are saying that it was probably the best UFC event of the year so far. Of course, this weekend we're headed back to the Apex for some dog shit.
Total dog shit. This is one of the weakest Apex cards in recent memory.
But let's focus on the positives.
Yeah.
Like we do on this show. We are known in the industry to focus on the positives. So
We're some uplifting motherfuckers. That's what people say about us.
And I guess like is almost always true in this sport. When you say focus on the positives, you mean positive for one person, negative for the other person who is involved in whatever fight you want to talk about. And obviously, let's start here. Main event, Joe Pyfer, body bags, goes out there, defeats Israel Adesanya, second round TKO, big win for the middleweight. Would you call Joe Pyfer a budding star for the UFC?
Star is a strong word, Chad.
I saw him referred in an email newsletter that I read, MMA related. I saw him referred to as one of the UFC's stars of the Paramount Plus era. And I thought, and this was before the fight. This was before the fight. This was last week. And I thought to myself, is he though? Because I don't know what metric we have. It's possible that this is true, and I just don't know about it. But like, I don't know what metric we have. I don't know where the Pyferholics are. I don't know that Pyfer Mania is running wild. I'm not sure. It might be. I was surprised to read this in print, and so I thought I would ask you: do you get the sense that Joe Pyfer is like loved or supported or has like a considerable fan base in the sport? Could that be true?
I think at this point you would have to say he is a somebody in the UFC's middleweight division. However,
but only now, right? Like only today.
I also think about something Chael Sonnen used to say when people would talk to him about, are you famous? Are you a star now? And this was after the first fight with Anderson Silva, before the second fight with Anderson Silva. And he would say something along the lines of, I'm MMA famous. You have to go to an MMA event to find people who reliably recognize me and know who I am. I can walk through the shopping mall just fine. And not really be bothered.
I remember
and I think Joe Pyfer's in that.
I remember being in an elevator with Matt Hughes in Las Vegas one time when Matt Hughes was the UFC welterweight champion, and a really drunk guy got in the elevator with us, and you could see him eyeballing Matt Hughes out the corner of his eye. And then at some point he was like, you are somebody, like that. But that's all he could come up with. He didn't know who Matt Hughes was. He just knew that he was somebody that maybe he should know. That's kind of MMA famous.
I like when drunk people say something that, if said in a different context and possibly different tone, could be an uplifting statement. You are somebody. We are all somebody.
We are all one.
So Joe Pyfer, I don't think is at any risk of being mobbed on the streets. Let's say that. He's just not there. I'm sure that there's a segment of the fan base that is really going to get excited about Joe Pyfer and everything, but it also seems like this was a big leap forward for him being an important person in that division. Here's the question I would put to you after watching this fight. Is Joe Pyfer good, or does Izzy Adesanya just not have it anymore? And it doesn't have to be either or. It could be both. But when you come out of that fight, did you go, well, goddamn, Joe Pyfer, he's here for a reason? Or did you come out of that and go, oh, Israel Adesanya used to be somebody?
Can I say kind of neither? Like, I think Joe Pyfer is probably good, right? He got this win. He looked relatively good in this win. He's now going to be, we're about to find out, is Joe Pyfer good? We will find out in the next couple of fights that Joe Pyfer gets booked in, probably, whether or not he is good. I saw a lot of
no
opinions
easy names ahead of him at this point in the division when you look at it.
Yeah. I saw a lot of people saying different stuff about Israel Adesanya. I saw Joe Pyfer come out today and be like, y'all need to stop talking shit about Israel Adesanya, basically, right? Kind of, and using that as a way for him to say, I'm good about himself.
And he was doing that a little bit before the fight where he was like, I think Israel Adesanya is the best middleweight of all time, better than that. And it's like, and this is a thing the CME Consulting Services, LLC, has been saying to fighters for a long time. You should always insist that the dude you're about to fight is a great fighter.
Yeah.
Because if you beat him, that means
greatest
you must
of all
be a
time.
great fighter. If you lose to him, well, you lost to a great fighter. It can happen. And especially after you beat him, you should insist he's an amazing fighter. He's one of the greatest to ever do it. And you don't need to say the other part. You let other people say the other part.
I think it's a complicated issue with Israel Adesanya right now, because we have talked before about how Israel Adesanya is one of these guys who has a fighting style that may not age well, right? The stuff that Israel Adesanya does might be less and less possible for him as he ages. And clearly at this point, he is on an extended losing streak. So he may have aged out of the Israel Adesanya fighting style. Now, when he was out there against Joe Pyfer, he didn't look done like dinner. He looked like he was still, he looked like he was still doing Israel Adesanya stuff, being Israel Adesanya, working his game plan. But I tell you what, there was a moment within the first minute or two of this fight where Joe Pyfer threw a power shot that Israel Adesanya barely avoided. It glanced the very front of his face. And I thought to myself at that moment, uh-oh. And even though Israel Adesanya looked good, he looked like he was doing fine, I kind of felt like we are fighting Joe Pyfer's fight this whole time. Because Pyfer really was, first of all, Israel Adesanya is out there not protecting his face at all, which I understand. Again, Israel Adesanya style. But as you get older, maybe you lose a fraction of an inch doing the thing where you don't protect your face and just rely on your athleticism and skill to slip punches and make people miss. That becomes less viable. And so I thought Joe Pyfer was like imposing his will. I thought he was the bigger guy. He managed to make this sort of like a, I don't want to say dirty, but like kind of grimy fight where, you know, he's throwing his power shots. He was forcing Israel Adesanya back, got him up against the cage, took him down a couple times. Israel Adesanya was doing good stuff, and you could tell that some of it was bothering Joe Pyfer. But leading up to the end, the whole time, the entire time, I was just kind of like, I had this feeling in my stomach. Like we're fighting Joe Pyfer's fight, and Joe Pyfer at some point is going to catch him and hurt him and finish the fight.
Yeah, I did not think that Israel Adesanya was playing to his strengths very often in this fight, because you're right, he hurt Joe Pyfer a couple times, and especially in the second round, and yet he was standing right there in front of him to be hit back. And that was because he would get a little momentum going, and then Joe Pyfer would come back. Joe Pyfer has surprisingly fast hands, faster than it looks, I think, and he hits hard. And so he would fire back, and he would just land one that would sort of halt Adesanya's offensive momentum and change the fight a little bit. And he did that a couple times. And I also thought Israel Adesanya, at least the old Israel Adesanya, didn't need to do this. He didn't need to stand right here toe-to-toe with these guys and try to see who can land the harder power shot. He had a little bit more stick and move to him. And that seems to have been lost a little bit. He just seemed like, I couldn't tell if he was fighting that way because he thought that that was to his advantage and just was wrong about it, or just because he doesn't have that same dynamic ability to hit and move the way he used to. And you're right that there were those moments where you're just like, you're not getting out of the way of these shots the way you used to. And the ones that you seem to eat no problem are getting to you now.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even still, it's not like he got starched or anything. It's not like he had that Chuck Liddell thing where his chin is totally gone. It was just that he couldn't stop the takedown when he needed to, and kind of just got stuck in a position where it just got worse and worse, and he couldn't do much to get out of it.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing where I look at it and I go, that guy doesn't, that's not a guy who's necessarily done. That's a guy,
Yeah.
he can still fight. He can still put on some exciting fights. There's still a bunch of people in the UFC he could probably beat, but it does seem like you've lost 4 straight, all of them to either champs or people conceivably you could call contenders. Nasruddin Imavov being like, number 1 contender, Joe Pyfer being sort of a coming man in the division. But now you need to, if you're going to stick around, you need to reframe what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Because you're far away from a title shot at this point. That you need to let that go. And if that's the only reason you're still in here is because you think I'm going to have the UFC title one day, we need to sit you down, put a loving hand on your shoulder and say, brother, that's not going to happen. That's probably not going to happen. What you can do is you could hang around. If you fight some peers, if you fight the right kind of guys, you could have some fun fights. You could keep going to the ballpark and keep getting paid, but is that enough for you? And that's, I've been working on a story this week, kind of talking to some fighters about, like, how do you know? What should be the thing that should tell you when it's time to retire? And they are all talking about, most of the fighters I've talked to are like, I don't think Izzy needs to retire. That fight didn't show me that Izzy is done and needs to get out of there. But one of the things, a couple people were like, hey, take a look over there at Michael Chiesa having himself a retirement fight that he said ahead of time, and he got to do it on home ground and had a real nice moment. They gave him a friendly matchup for it, all that kind of stuff, and start to think about your exit plan.
Yeah. There was that moment where Pyfer got a takedown right at the end of the first round up against the fence and landed a pretty nasty elbow before.
In a bad spot up against the fence too.
Yeah, and that was just one of those things that added to the sick feeling that I had in my stomach, where I was like, well, that wasn't good. And when he had Israel Adesanya's back and he had him in the body triangle in the second round, I don't know that I've ever seen a fighter make a more unhappy, uncomfortable face.
Yeah,
than Israel Adesanya was making in that position. I
thought the same thing. I was watching this fight and just thinking to myself, like, that is a man who is suffering in there right now. That is a man who is thinking about all the other places he might rather be.
But what about Joe Pyfer, whose middle name, by the way, is Oliver, according to his Wikipedia page, Joseph Oliver Pyfer.
What do you want us to do with that information, Chad?
I like to, when somebody has a distinctive middle name, I like to put it out there so people know. It goes back to the days of Nathan Donald Diaz and other folks.
Robert Glenn Lawler.
Yeah. So Joseph Oliver Pyfer.
That's a real middle name right there, isn't it? Like, your parents were like, it's a family name, maybe. We want it in here. We know better than to stick you with the name Oliver. Although, hey, maybe if Joe Pyfer had grown up Oliver Pyfer, he'd already be a world champion.
Yeah.
He had that boy named Sue chip on his shoulder the entire time.
7-1 now in his UFC career. His only loss to Jack Hermanson back in February of 2024. He's got the wins over Kelvin Gastelum and Gerald Meerschaert, but Israel Adesanya, obviously at this point, the crown jewel on the resume of Joe Pyfer. A lot of performance of the night bonuses also for Joe Pyfer. So you could see how the UFC would like him. You could see how he could be a guy for the UFC. But what happens to him now? Like we said, it seems like there will only be tough fights now in front of him. And I didn't necessarily come away with the idea that Joe Pyfer is unbeatable after watching this fight.
Yeah.
Did you?
No. And I think that he has a certain style. Again, I don't think that he's gonna be that tough to figure out for people. I think it's going to be knowing what you're getting and then being able to do something about it because he's there. He's not doing any magic in there, you know? And when I look at the people who are ahead of him right now, I believe they show him tied for 6 in the rankings with Anthony Hernandez. So ahead of him, well, you got him and Anthony Hernandez, and then ahead of them, Kyle Burallo, Brendan Allen, Sean Strickland, Nasruddin Imavov, Dricus Duplessis, and then of course Hamzat. And of those people, I think he and Brendan Allen would be a tough one for both guys.
I mean, maybe the good news there is that he could have fun fights with all of those people.
Yeah, he could. For instance, right now, say we made a fight to appeal to problematic brother-in-laws everywhere between Sean Strickland and Joe Pyfer. We want to put together a fight that.
Are we doing Sean Thomas Strickland for the title though? Is that
yeah, we're doing? I'm just saying, just imagine a scenario where, like, if you had him, we need to have something that's going to pack biker bars all across America, right? Like
that is a bad family reunion, right there.
Yes. Do you think Joe Pyfer right now, the Joe Pyfer you saw on Saturday night against Israel Adesanya, do you think he beats Sean Strickland? Because I don't think he does.
Probably not, although he would certainly have the opportunity to punch Sean Strickland, given Sean Strickland's fighting style, which I think would give Pyfer some opportunity. But
I think Sean Strickland's fighting style will give Joe Pyfer a lot of problems, honestly.
Well, yeah, I think it would too. Sean Strickland, as much as we want to talk about him, is pretty good at the thing he does.
Yeah,
and so he'd probably be the favorite there. I honestly. I looked at this list and I thought Joe Pyfer versus DDP. You want to see a couple of fucking crazy wild men out there taking punches out of their back pockets and swinging for the fences.
You get some rock'em sock'em out of that for sure.
Yeah,
for sure you do.
I mean, either of those guys fast track Joe Pyfer if he wins, right?
Yeah, and it just seems like, when you beat a guy like Israel Adesanya at this stage of his career, it is going to be tough for people to know exactly what to make of it. Again, smart for him to try to frame the conversation to be like, he's one of the best ever, and he's still amazing. Because that's how you don't want people to be like, this is a sign that Israel Adesanya's decline is sharper even than we assumed. But you also, there were some moments in that fight where it's just like, okay, Joe Pyfer is vulnerable. You could see it. And it was just that, like, this version of Israel Adesanya, he could go A to B, but he couldn't get all the way to C the way he used to.
Yeah. Remember, you're listening to the Co-Main Event podcast proper. This show drops every Tuesday afternoon for free in your timelines and podcast libraries. But if you want even more of the Co-Main Event, you can find Ben Folks and myself all week over on Patreon. Hit us up at patreon.com/co-main event. Get loads of extra audio and video content, as well as access to our official Discord message board, where they're talking fights and a lot of other stuff literally all the time. We'd love it if you would join the team. Patreon.com/co-main event. Another great way to support the show is by going to co-mainevent.com, checking out our merchandise shop. We got t-shirts, we got hats, we got hoodies, we got lots more. Stop by and pick up our best-selling Daddest Man on the Planet coffee mug or t-shirt while we can keep them in stock. You can get yourself a Dundasso t-shirt, a Bobby Knuckles t-shirt, a Volcomania shirt. We got it all. Just go to the website co-mainevent.com and click the link at the top of the page that says shop. As always, we partner with our friend Johnny Ashcroft on the shop. He is a graphic designer from Portland, Oregon. We can't recommend him highly enough for all your design needs. Hit him up at studiosuperconductor.com or on Instagram at studiosuperconductor. Ben, Alexa Grasso did some absolutely grotesque shit to Maycee Barber on Saturday. We are going to talk about that next, because right now, like we always do about this time, let's do a little bit of listener mail.
Listener mail.
First piece of listener mail this week comes to us from Mike Garcia of voiceofgarcia.com. Our old buddy, he writes, okay, I have to admit that was one of the most impressive moments I've ever seen in women's MMA. Maycee Barber getting knocked out, strangled, and essentially went into shock. Will we see Valentina Grasso 4? Come on, I know you wanna. This is a weird sport, man.
Yeah.
You know, you can have Michael Chiesa have a classy, feel-good retirement. You can have Joe Pyfer kind of have like a coming out party, get launched into the middleweight contender status. And in the middle of all of that, you can have Maycee Barber look like she died. And the immediate response to that is glee and astonishment across the socials, right? Not necessarily because it happened to Maycee Barber, but just like the reaction to that naturally in fight sports is that was awesome. And at some point, we're gonna be talking about how something is awesome when something really bad happens to somebody. Because this was a weird and scary incident, simultaneously one of the most impressive things that maybe we've ever seen in the sport.
Is crazy. Is great. Remember we said this about Gable Steveson when one of these fights where he knocked a dude out and then took him down before the dude could fall. Essentially, like, because he just like threw a punch and then went straight into a takedown, did not even realize the guy was already unconscious and the fight was essentially over. And Alexa Grasso did kind of a version of that where she knocked Maycee Barber out and then let her fall sort of into a rear naked choke.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, the thing that was weird about it was she hits her. She's clearly, as soon as that punch lands, she's rocked. She's completely out of it. Lets her fall into the choke. Ref gets in there pretty much right away, and she lets her go. Maycee Barber rolls into a single leg on the ref, and then
zombie takedown.
Yeah, just complete autopilot at that point, which I always think is such an interesting moment because it's like that's a thing that shows you how ingrained the training is for these, like just how much muscle memory is in there. Because that's the shit. She's doing that literally in her sleep. Her body just knows, uh-oh, trouble. Here's what we do. Let's go for that takedown. And then when she finally gets the message sort of physically or whatever that it's over, then goes back to being knocked out.
Yeah.
And that's wild. There's just like wild neurological shit happening on TV, on live TV when
it's a fucked up sport, man.
MMA sport. It's crazy.
We would have to get a doctor in here to explain to us how that even happens, because that was some of the weirdest shit I've ever seen. Is, you know, we see people get like TKO'd and try to shoot a single on the referee, but it's rare that you see someone knocked out, like into the land of wind and ghosts, try to shoot a single. Because she tried to shoot a single on Mike Beltran, and then when he stopped it, she was immediately unconscious.
Yeah.
And was that way for a while, and was also laying flat on her back, arms akimbo. I don't know if I'm using that word correctly, but she's splayed out. She's her arms are in the Jesus Christ pose.
I thought that was like hands on hips.
Maybe.
Could be totally wrong.
I don't know. We'd have to look it up.
You keep talking. I'm
staring straight into the camera with her dead-eyed, unconscious stare, but also like blinking and kind of like, you know, taking heaving breaths. And the UFC camera stayed on her for an uncomfortably long amount of time, which they usually don't do. Usually they will cut away from that shit and show something else. But this one was so weird, just how it happened, that as I watched it, I was wondering if it was not completely clear to the camera person that she was unconscious, or to the people in the truck, because it you know, she had just appeared conscious until she was put down on the mat. And so it was very weird. This was one of the strangest things that I've seen.
First of all, arms akimbo does mean standing with hands on hips.
Okay, wow, good for you.
But
look
also,
at you. Look at the big brain on Ben.
If you Google arms akimbo, Google thinks that you're trying to look up Los Angeles-based rock band that blends pop, indie, and rock influences into their music. Their band name is called Arms Akimbo. No upcoming tour dates, according to their website, just to let you know. Here's the thing, though, about Voice of Garcia's question.
Yeah.
We can't really do another Alexa Grasso fight at this point.
Not at the moment, right?
She has one win after, she had that victory over Valentina where she won the belt. Then they fought to a draw. Then she lost. Lost pretty one-sided fight there. Then she lost to Natalia Silva. Now she won this fight. Great win. Great highlight. Honestly, kind of the highlight of the year so far. Probably the finish of the year. And you have to go some to beat this one, I think. Mm-hmm. Just because it's so crazy. But you're still over there. Like, we already saw the shit out of Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko fighting. Plus, you have Natalia Silva. She's coming off that win over Rose Namajunas, but also just hasn't lost in the UFC. How do you like overlook her just because we saw something shiny? We saw something crazy happen and we go, all right, wait your turn, Natalia Silva. It's not here yet. Go do something wild if you want to get our attention. Like, I know we're leaning into maybe a new era of the UFC with some of that shit, but we can't get ridiculous about it, can we?
Well, we can. We can. Why would you even ask me that? We can. We can get ridiculous with it. Can and will. Wish a motherfucker would get ridiculous with it. That's what we're doing now. That's the thing. Plus, this was the fight that seemed like it was supposed to get Maycee Barber in that position.
Yes,
right? Because she was the betting favorite coming into this fight, which in retrospect seems outlandish. But this seemed like it was the one that was supposed to springboard Maycee Barber into that position, number one contender status or something resembling that. So if you turned around and told me the thing Alexa Grasso did was so impressive and she's the better known person and we're going to put her in a fight with Valentina Shevchenko, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we saw that shit, though. We saw it. We saw it a whole bunch of fucking times. I don't know how you turn around and get us to watch it again.
Next question this week comes to us from Hammerhead Hannigan, who I must tell you is a minor villain and the lead henchman of the Taurus Bulba in the animated series Darkwing Duck.
Oh my God. It's gotten out of hand now.
It really has. Yeah. We're getting all kinds of characters from DuckTales and Darkwing Duck are writing into the podcast. He writes, as much as we rightfully criticize referees in this sport for late stoppages and allowing Dundasso to be the best base in MMA, can we acknowledge how well Beltran handled the ending of Grasso versus Barber, immediately jumping in to stop the fight, lightly tapping Maycee as she instinctively tried to wrestle and cradling her head to the mat as she drifted out again. With all the terrible refereeing we see in this sport, it feels appropriate to acknowledge when it's done right. I agree with that. And watching Mike Beltran put Maycee Barber gently down on the canvas as if he was laying a baby down to sleep was like, I have to admit, it was an impressive refereeing moment, I thought.
Yeah, and this was something I recall it being mentioned in the Combat Sports Officials Summit. There were a lot of things where John McCarthy's just sharing these little detail tips for how to handle stuff. Like, for instance, if you're trying to get somebody's hand off the cage, somebody's grabbing shorts, or somebody's grabbing something they're not supposed to, instead of like trying to grab their hand and pull it off, you want to hit it up. You want to knock their hand up in the air, Chad. That'll get them to release the defense. And also, if somebody is knocked out and still trying to go after you and convince you are the opponent, tap them. Just let's try to get their muscle memory to kick in that way. If you just go ahead and tap a few times, and maybe their body will think like, okay, I've won. There's the tap. I got the submission. Then sometimes that'll get them to stop. And that it's a brilliant little thing where it's just like, all right, the neurons aren't quite picking up what's happening. Let's go ahead and enter the dream state with them. It's kind of like they tell you with like Alzheimer's patients, like, don't try to explain to them every day that their childhood friend is long since dead and it is not the summer of 1947 anymore. Just be like, yep, that's right. I'm your brother Terry. He definitely didn't die in the Korean War. Here I am. Let's talk about it. Just lean into it. And that's kind of what he did there. And it is good, especially because it's like, that's a crazy sequence. And that is another thing that was brought up in that Combat Sports Official Summit was, no matter how much you've seen, you ain't seen it all. Not in this sport. There's always crazy shit you could encounter that you've never dealt with before, that you've never even seen before. And this is the kind of thing where somebody's knocked out, falls into a submission. You try to get in there. Like, he did do a good job. There's no way you could handle that situation any better.
Yeah. Next question this week comes to us from Big Unk, our guy.
Oh, God. Hold on. Is Big Unk about to mention how his lack of a social life affected his viewing positively or negatively this weekend?
Only one way to find out. Big Unk writes, my dudes, my guys, my lovely, lovely boys. These motherfuckers don't make it easy. I'm sitting over here trying to nurture my apathy for the UFC product while still tuning in to the action every week because ain't shit else happening in my life.
There it is. There it is.
And they go and put on a truly memorable card in Seattle. Not memorable for any nice reasons other than Chiesa, but still, it felt nice to see some way again, to feel some way again when watching fights, even if those feelings were horror and fear in the co-main and trepidation and loathing in the main event. I assume you guys are going to talk about the cock tractor extraordinaire already. Does he mean Joe Pyfer?
I think he does.
So I'll just leave my comments on the main event at this. Fuck Joe Pyfer. Okay, so he does mean Joe Pyfer.
Yeah.
I'm asking about your boy Chase the Dream Hooper. He has had 2 pretty brutal losses in a row now. It seemed like he was on a bit of a Legends ass whooping tour there for a while, but hasn't been able to carry on that momentum forward to fighting his contemporaries. Where does the CME's favorite curly-headed BJJ nerd go from here? I can tell you where I wish he was going. Most Valuable Promotions on Netflix.
Yeah.
I doubt that he is.
They could do some business with Chase Hooper.
Yeah,
they'd find him somebody.
One of the several reasons why he'll probably be sticking around in the UFC.
Yeah, this is a tough one for him, man. He got fucking rocked and rocked pretty good even before the knockout. It was one where I had to agree with Daniel Cormier because I thought it was a little bit of an early stoppage. It looked like he was setting up a good open guard sweep and looked like he was going top to bottom. Now, once the referee gets involved, you can never totally tell, did he sweep him or did the referee go falling on there and help throw off everybody's momentum? But when the ref makes that stoppage and Chase Hooper doesn't complain, Chase Hooper just kind of like puts his head down and tries to collect himself, then you go, okay, I guess that stoppage couldn't have been too bad. Chase Hooper is exactly in a position. He not passing the what the fuck test in that moment. He took some hard shots from Lance Gibson Jr. in this before. And I was like, the first shot that he hit him with knocked him so far across the cage that Lance had time to like take his time walking over there to think about what he wanted to throw next. And I don't know, it's just like Chase Hooper's one of those guys where you're a specialist. We know that there's this one area of your game, but you don't want to come out of the corner to start round 1 and get right to it. You got to make the guy respect your striking a little bit. You can't let him think like, okay, the shot is coming all the time or it's all Imanari rolls all the time, but even standing there for just a couple minutes proved to be a bad idea. Wasn't able to get to do any of his stuff.
2 losses in a row now for Chase Hooper, Alexander Hernandez, and Lance Gibson Jr. Prior to that, he had 5 wins in a row. So maybe we can still coast by a little bit for one more for Chase Hooper in the UFC on that streak. Chase Hooper also still only 26 years old. So a young pup in many ways in this sport, but we'll see. We'll see what happens next. I wanted to read this one from Algermain Aluminum, who wrote in to say, pour one out for Niko Price. He says, I'm happy Chiesa got his flowers, but seeing Niko Price standing next to him, gloves off, also retiring, but never getting the chance to speak before ultimately being shoved unceremoniously out of the cage had me feeling some type of way. Dude deserved better. I do agree with this. It was nice to see Chiesa get the win, although when you saw this go down, as it happened, it was easy to think, well, that was a setup for him to get a win. Like, not that the fight was fixed, but just like, we all knew what would happen there, and it played out
easy for me to see it when they put it on the card.
Exactly how we thought it was going to go down is how it went down. Michael Chiesa, this is how easy it is, I guess, to be a media darling in a sport where we expect very little from the athletes. Like Michael Chiesa, like Kenny Florian before him, was always amazing to talk to as a reporter because he would call you at the time he was supposed to call you. He would know your name. He would speak to you kind of like you were friends, like he knew you. And he was always very, very honest, or seemingly honest and forthcoming in his interviews, which made him fairly beloved, as far as I can tell, among media people. I know it made him beloved by me because it was always great to talk to Michael Chiesa. I was perhaps maybe a little bit surprised to find out, well, maybe not surprised, but also a little bit surprised to find out that apparently he was also beloved enough inside the UFC to earn a moment like this, like a retirement fight for him in the state of Washington against a guy who he was probably going to beat in this exact fashion, and then did it, and then got the moment that so few fighters get in the cage. But it was nice to see. It was nice to see for Michael Chiesa.
It was, and the nature of the whole thing made it seem like this is what we were going for. We were trying to give a nice moment on this fight card because, hey, we're going to Seattle. Mike Chiesa is one of the best known still active fighters at that point from the Pacific Northwest, holding it down out there in Spokane. You got to put him on this card. And then we give him a very friendly matchup, especially when we know he's done. And then Niko Price kind of told people beforehand, by the way, I am also going to be done. And people went, oh, okay, cool. Thanks for coming, man. And you know, you go out there, you get Michael Chiesa jumping on his back right away, sinks in that choke. Easy work there. The most effective offensive move Niko Price did was trying to like spike his head on the canvas in that last ditch effort to get him off his back, which didn't seem like it was fun. It didn't seem like Michael Chiesa's cervical discs are going to be appreciating that, but still they held on there, got the choke, finished it real easy, got in and out of there. And Daniel Cormier said something afterwards that seemed to suggest it was his decision not to interview Niko Price, where he was like, I don't know how you go from that moment where you have this great moment with Michael Chiesa where he gets to, you know, stand there in the spotlight, bask in the adoration, and then turn around with a downer moment and go to Niko Price and be like, oh, by the way, you were also done and you barely were able to do anything in that fight. Like, what do you say? And yet it does suck because it's just like, we brought you in here to do a job just because we knew that you would lose this one. You did. You lost. You also told us, all right, you know, I bled out here. I did some crazy shit for you guys. I got the fans on their feet. I was a reliable fighter in one way or another. And then you used me up. And then when it's my time, don't even give me a moment on the mic to say goodbye. Just say, like, get out of here. Leading you out to the alleyway and you hear the door close and lock behind you. That sucks, man.
It does really suck. I feel like they should have given Niko Price a moment on the mic there.
Just a moment. Just one little moment.
It feels particularly cruel to do that to him. And I don't know. I mean, I suppose if you wanted to be an asshole, you could be like, also, though, read the room, Niko Price. You know, like, you had to know going into this that your retirement was going to play second fiddle to Chiesa's retirement, I guess, unless you beat him, which Niko Price was certainly planning on doing, even though it didn't turn out that way. It's rough, man. That's a rough way to. Again, it's like I said at the beginning of the show, we're going to focus on the positives for one person. Oftentimes, significant negatives also for the other person.
Yeah.
Did you see the Kevin Lee tweet?
I saw Kevin Lee's tweets, and then I saw Mike Chiesa's response on Ariel Helwani's show yesterday, and I had to say, Mike Chiesa makes a convincing case where he was just like, me and this guy, man, I don't know. I thought we'd squashed all this beef. And also where he was like, this fight he's talking about where he claims I came into his locker room and tried to fight him. And he was like, I was working that one. I was doing broadcasting stuff. And even if I wasn't, can you imagine me going into somebody's locker room and trying to fight them? And you can't. Like, if anybody who knows Michael Chiesa, you can't imagine him doing that.
That's that goodwill built up that I was talking about.
And you're saying that it was all a ruse?
So no, I'm just saying he's right. Like, if you've interacted with Michael Chiesa more than one time in this business, you know that it would be hard. That he doesn't seem like that kind of guy. He seems like the opposite of that kind of guy.
And he said that also everybody knew he and Kevin had that kind of history. It's like, anytime we've been in a room together, people are bringing out their phones and getting ready to record just in case something crazy happens. So if that happened, there would be video. You would have seen it by now. And I was just like, yeah, okay. I believe Mike on this one.
Last question this week came to us from Ravine the Impossible.
Okay, that's the Australian illusionist that we heard from, Peter Ravine. We heard from him. Now we're going with his stage name, I think.
Right. Between work, coaching, and training my wife, and I only get a couple of nights to chill and watch TV together. Oh, I'm sorry. Training my wife and I. Could have used a comma.
Between work, coaching, and training. That's where the comma
there should be a comma. My wife and I only get a couple of nights to chill and watch TV together. To compromise for all the wrestling and MMA we watch, a baking competition we watch. Okay. See?
Ravine, we need to work on the commas, man.
Yeah. To compromise for all the wrestling and MMA we watch a baking and competition. Jesus Christ. Read this, Ben.
You fucked it up there.
I'm tapping out.
We watched a baking competition and American Idol. This piggybacks off of previous discussions. Here's where there should also be a comma. But I found myself watching these other competitions differently after last week's show. I was struck by how much they make me care about each singer and baker. They show their whys, their families, hometown, hardships, etc. With UFC, it is always the same. I train hard. I want to win. I understand the difference in demographic, but it still feels like such a missed opportunity monetarily and for growth, not to be more like these popular shows that must be creative to gain traction in their more competitive landscapes with millions of reality shows to compete with. Not really a question, just kind of wanted to articulate that epiphany.
This is such an amazing point. Like, BT Dubs, Ravine, I also struggle with comma usage, so don't feel bad. And sorry for disparaging you, because this is a incredibly insightful and salient point about MMA and specifically about the UFC right now. And the only thing I can say about it is because they don't want to, because they literally don't care enough to do that anymore. And oh, by the way, they produce so much fucking content now that if they are still doing that stuff, it's hard to find it. Remember, they used to do like the lead up to the fight, what did they call it? The Insider, the Road to the Octagon. Remember, they used to do these like half hour
for the big fights.
Yeah, like half hour documentary things that you
like the HBO 24/7 style.
Yeah, and there's good stuff. If they were still doing that, could you even find it? Where would it be? How would you ever know that it existed? So in some ways, Ravine the Impossible is getting to one of the core problems in the sport right now.
Yeah, and they do some of this stuff sometimes on the broadcast when there is a story to tell. Sometimes, though, it just seems like I feel as a viewer, I'm sort of programmed to expect a lot of filler between fights. And I'll just sort of tune out for a lot of it. And so maybe they are doing more of that than I'm giving them credit for. But it does seem like somebody was asking me about this in my mailbag, I think last week, where they were pointing out they had a clip from one of the Chael Sonnen, I think the second Chael Sonnen Anderson Silva fight. And they were just like, how come the UFC can't produce moments like these anymore? And I was like, because that moment was not just about the fight that was happening. It was about what you understood of the narrative between these two people, between like the stakes, what it means to them, what this rivalry means. Like, you carried a lot emotionally into watching that fight, and that's why it felt so important to you. And some of it is just the nature of the schedule. It's hard to build to something when you're always promoting the next fight, and there's one every goddamn weekend. You bounce right from Seattle, and we're going back to the Apex for just the dog shit ass dog shit. Headlined by Renato Moicano, a guy who said nobody cares about the Apex, brother. You don't really have a chance to build to some of that stuff. But I think also, as we'll end up talking about in our next segment here, I think there's an apathy on the UFC's part where they just think, as Dana White said repeatedly in response to different questions at the UFC post-fight press conference in Seattle, who gives a shit? And the answer is clearly not him.
Yeah. That's going to do it for listener mail this week. If you have a question, comment, or concern that you want to air to the podcast in future weeks, you know how to do it. Go to the website, co-mainevent.com, and click the link at the top right-hand corner of the screen that says email the podcast. That'll get you in touch with us. Ben, you said it, man. Dana White in classic, current Dana White form at the post-fight press conference on Saturday. Do you have a legitimate question about the UFC product? Who gives a shit? Just watch the fights. We'll talk about that right after this. Ben, longtime listeners of the show will know that we used to have a segment that we would do every week called Are You Fucking Kidding Me? Where we would each choose some kind of ridiculous happening in the sport. We would talk about it and basically we would say, Are you fucking kidding me? Haven't done it in a while because for various reasons, but we have a joint Are You Fucking Kidding Me this week. We're going to talk about it briefly before we get into this other stuff Dana White said. But we also used to have a thing on the show that was called a CM Punk story.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a story that someone would tell about themselves where even in the most charitable light, even in their own telling of the story, they make themselves look like the asshole.
But they don't realize it. That's the thing that makes it a CM Punk story. They think that they're telling a story about them being awesome.
Yeah.
And really what they're telling is a very different kind of story where you go, you don't understand how this story comes across.
Yeah. Dana White goes on one of these podcasts this week. I don't know which. Do you know what it was? I don't know which podcast it was. Biggie and the Bear. One of these Crazy in the Brains. One of these podcasts where two guys just get on and say jokes about stuff, which I don't know why you would listen to that. I don't know why you would listen to a podcast that was just two guys every week.
Just chopping it up.
14 years just talking about stuff. It doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, Dana White goes on this podcast. He tells a story that his son's due date to be born was on the same day that the UFC had an event scheduled where Chuck Liddell was fighting. And the story basically is that Dana White takes the doctor aside and is like, this isn't going to work for me. We need to do a C-section to have the baby be born early so that then I can go to Vegas to preside over this Chuck Liddell fight, which, are you fucking kidding me, dude? Are you fucking kidding me?
Now, I saw some people point out on Twitter, they're like, this story doesn't even add up because of when Chuck fought and when his son was born. Maybe he was talking about like his daughter or something else. But anyway, even if we assume that the story is true, one of the things that he says is that his wife's plan had been to go in there on the due date, whenever the due date came around, whenever the baby was ready to be born, and have, a vaginal birth. And instead Dana White's like, no, let's get it done before then. Let's just go ahead and do a C-section, basically Dana White was just like, cut her open. I ain't got time for this. I got to be somewhere. Cut her open and let's get on with it. Which it's not a minor thing, cutting open a person's body like that. So, but he's telling the story to show you just like, yeah, hell yeah, this is how serious and committed to my work I am. Which is, he thinks, yeah, he's telling a story about, this is what a badass dude I am about my business, but also it serves as a little bit of a contrast, doesn't it? The Dana White, because the Dana White has missed UFC events now just because he wants to be at something else.
He wouldn't cross the street to promote a Chuck Liddell fight now, today. It's all, you know what else it is? Misogyny.
Yes,
like terrible misogyny and a view into this relationship that later we found more about in a very public way. But just, are you fucking kidding me, dude?
Fucking kidding me? Now, the stuff that happened at the press conference, I think, was illuminating. Not necessarily surprising, but it was revealing, because it's like Dana White in his full middle-aged 100 millionaire grumpiness. As we've said, you've been on it for a long time, saying he is just gradually turning into the Bob Arum of MMA, just getting older and grumpier and stodgier and just fed up with everything, and acts like he's doing us a favor by even showing up to these things. And asked in a couple different times, asked about the UFC's use of like AI, clearly AI made like segments on broadcasts, asked about, hey, what did end up happening with this John Jones negotiation? You said this, he said this, what's the actual story? And in both instances, for one thing, with the AI stuff, he was just like, hey, AI's coming, deal with it. Who fucking cares? Watch the fights. Who gives a shit? And for one thing, it's like, oh yeah, really? The guy on the meta board is telling us like, hey, and see, this is a thing, this is a separate issue, but this is a thing you keep hearing from AI people where they're just like, it's coming, can't stop it, don't stop complaining about it. And it's just like, do you think it's a good sign that you just you keep telling people it's inevitable, people keep telling you they hate it, you keep saying we're doing it anyway? Like, it doesn't feel like it's exactly successful in that regard if people fucking hate it every time they see it. And then he has the same response when somebody asks him about John Jones, like what happened there in negotiation. He's just like, who gives a shit? Bro, it's John Jones, and it's talking about what fights you did and did not make for what you have said will be your biggest event of the year. A historic event, never before done at the White House. And you're going to turn around when somebody asks a question about matchmaking for that thing, your answer is going to be, who gives a shit? You were supposed to give a shit. All of us give a shit. If the people who care about this sport, they give a shit about this. And you can't even be bothered to answer the question about it. You're just like, who cares? Well, fuck, man. Why should anybody if you don't care? Like, this is not a small thing. This isn't asking about how did Ayman Zahabi end up on the card. This is asking about the guy you have said is the pound for pound greatest fighter in MMA history. You had a chance to make an absolutely huge fight between him and Alex Pereira on what you've said will be the biggest event of the year. You didn't get it done. You didn't get it across the finish line. And when people ask you to talk about how that happened, why it didn't get done, you say, who gives a shit? And it's just like this mixture of apathy for his own product and disdain toward anybody who would dare to ask a question about it, dare to be like, hey, we were kind of excited about that possibility. What happened? And then be like, how dare you? What? And him saying, just watch the fights, where you're just like, he's just saying, listen, peasants, the gruel you got in your bowl is the gruel I'm willing to give you. Eat it, shut up, and then wait until the next gruel feeding. And that's the point that he's gotten to with it, where it's just like he can't be bothered. He's just like saying, like, look, we get paid a ton of money to put on any of these shows. You idiots sit there and watch it, and I don't want to hear shit from you about the product you are paying for, about you, the fans, who made me monstrously rich. How dare you ask me anything about it? It's really It's all right there, right in front of us.
There's one fight we can't watch.
Yes, we want to watch the fights, the good fights, and
we would love to shut up and watch the fight, but we can't. We can't watch it because it's not happening. The AI thing, man, and on our own Discord message board over on the Patreon, you and I have been compared to late 19th century lamplighters responding to the advent of the electric light, which maybe that's true, but also regardless of how you feel about AI and whether or not, quote unquote, it's coming and shut up and watch the fights, this is a multi-billion-dollar company. Pay a fucking graphics guy, dude.
Yeah.
Pay a fucking artist $2,500 or whatever to like make a poster, or just like they used to have people do that shit for free. Remember this? With like, there would be people who cared so much about the UFC, really talented people would be like, check out this poster I made for the upcoming UFC show. Like, pay someone who probably wants to do your graphics or wants to do art for you or whatever. How much are you saving? You're probably saving what, $10,000 maybe. This multi-billion-dollar company is so lazy and full of avarice that like they're using AI to make some shit to like probably save a buck. Fuck out of here with that shit.
That's the thing. You could call me the lamplighter guy if the AI stuff were better, and it's not. If it were better, we wouldn't be able to so easily spot that it's AI every fucking time.
Yeah,
it sucks. It sucks. And the reason when these like business people are saying like it's coming, you can't stop it, it's coming, what they mean is it's cheaper for us, even if the quality is shittier. We don't care. It's good enough that the cost effectiveness of it outweighs our desire to make something good. And so when people complain to them about it, the reason why their answer is it's inevitable. Who gives a shit? Shut up about it. It's just because it's inevitable because of the way it works for us, not because we give a shit about coming up with something good for you.
I guess that's going to do it for the co-main event podcast this week. Thanks everybody for listening. We are over on the Patreon page all week long. We got the live chat tomorrow. We got a lot of handy tiers of patronage. We would love it if you would jump on and join the team. We think you'd like it. If you're still listening now, I think you'd like it.
If you made it this far, Jesus.
Yeah, just jump on. There's more stuff. You like that too. Patreon.com/co-main event. That's where we are at. If you don't do that, we'll talk to you back here next week. As for right now, we are done. We are through. We are out. You know, not to put an even finer point on it, but can you imagine being Dana White and telling this story about your wife being so tone deaf to the current moment, telling this story in the year of our Lord 2026 when people's autonomy over their own bodies is potentially more in question now than it has been for 20, 30, 40 years? It's just like unthinking. Completely unthinking, unself-conscious, unself-aware, just blabbering on a podcast, telling stories where you think you look awesome.
Well, and it's a story that he's told before. So it's also, he went in there, he's like, I know what'll wow them. Oh, I got a story for these guys.
I got this one in my back pocket.
That Dana he's a committed businessman.